Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Process. I am one of two hosts here, and Marco Antonio Alvarez, alongside with Mr. Wesley Mosier. That's right. And this is episode July 17th, 2024. I figure we're just going to do that now, just use the date instead of numbers for right now as we get caught up. As those of you have noticed, we have our YouTube channel up and running. So please like, subscribe, and share, comment, and all that good stuff. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Wesley to introduce today's topic of conversation.
Yeah, so I think we both agreed today would be a good, given what's happening politically and just societally and our personal lives, which you always try to anchor back to, this principle of like how we choose to respond to events outside of our control, or more specifically, how do we respond to tragedy, or how do we respond to negative things that happen to us that we didn't plan. And I feel like the reason why I'll kind of introduce my 2 cents on it. The reason I think that is so important is we talk a lot about momentum and imperfect action. And the whole theme is like, we have to increase our rate of output. We got to increase the rate by which we can, build momentum. And that comes with, imperfect action. It allows you to take action faster, or small wins and all these little things that we've talked about on the podcast. But a lot of the lag that happens that slows us down from being able to take action, or at least transform into the person that we want to be, is we'll be on this trajectory. And I've seen it a lot with myself, and I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. This concept of like burnout happens a lot, where you're like, you have this train that's going of momentum for yourself, and then something happens, you get stressed, and then you kind of get sidelined, and then you're in this kind of weird fog for like 2 months, and then you finally climb out of it, and now you're back on the set, and now you're back on the tracks, and you're going, and then something else happens, and you kind of. And so I think the time that we take responding to things negatively, or dwelling on those things, or letting it sidetrack us into these weird little side quests, affects our ability to transform. And oftentimes it kind of reverses our momentum. We start to decay, and then we got to pick back up from scratch, from square one. And there's a quote that I really like, that I resonate with a lot, that is from Viktor Frankl. He says, it can have meaning if it changes you for the better. And I want that to kind of be the theme of today's conversation, is like, no matter what happens, whether it's just a basic work setback, or we're not going to hit our projections this month, or we're worried about how we're going to pay bills next couple weeks, or whatever it is, it can have meaning if it changes us for the better. So how can we interpret these events as beneficial, and how can we extract the good from it, so that we can keep our momentum going, instead of kind of letting ourselves sit on the bench for too much time.
Mm-hmm. Sitting on the bench in a pity party, wallowing in our misery, saying, woe is me. Oh, how shitty this is. What have I done? Why do I keep fucking up? None of us talk to ourselves that way, right? So it's what I've found that has been working really well. And this is something that I'm learning from Michael Singer. And if any of you guys know who he is, awesome. And if you don't, that's okay. I was going to say I have the book here, but it's in the bedroom. And I think this goes back, this does go back to principles that we've talked about before. And this goes back to presence, being present, being present, being present. About here now. If I am focused on the future, on an unknown future, I'm gonna get anxious. If I am focused on the past, I'm going to get resentful, angry. And so I want to shift my attention to what is here and now. And part of what happens is that we experience things that don't go our way, and then we have some sort of emotional impediment What is that? What's an emotion? It's energy in motion, but then suddenly it gets stuck somewhere. And, it's nothing new. This has been talked about for thousands of years with yogis and then repackaged by modern day psychology. What's psychology? What is the word root of psyche? Where does that come from? It means soul. So it's work of the soul, right? So this is what we're ultimately talking about here. And it's like, what sort of practices can you do? So here's a real simple one, because it's about what it's about. It's about letting go. It's about letting go what's not serving us. So if I'm going to be hanging on and sitting in that pity party of self and fucking, oh, again, woe is me. What's that doing? Nothing. That's just feeding that part of the ego that, wants to feel sorry for itself and wants sympathy and all that. And that's not going to move anything forward. And I'm not saying this without a lack of compassion or a lack of empathy. I get it. I've been there. I'm there many times. I was there this morning. I was there yesterday. It's a place that is constantly dropped into. And the key is this. This is the key. How much time do you want to spend there? You can cultivate a practice to where when you drop into those states, you recognize it as soon as you're getting there, and you can do something about it to get out of there really quick. Right? It's like you're driving, you go into a bad neighborhood and you're like, oh shit, I got to turn around. Or let me take this left. Let me take the right to get out of there, as opposed to like, you're still in it and you're still going, and it's going to happen. No one's born with these tools. No one's born with this awareness. We got to develop it. All right. So cool. All this, theoretical talk. So give me something, old man. So it's like, all right, here's one for you. It's really simple. Really simple. Talked about it before. I'm going to talk about it again because it's that valuable. Whenever you're experiencing even the subtlest and tiniest of annoyances, like for example, let's say the Zoom call isn't loading up correctly, or someone in front of you in traffic is going really slow, and you immediately start having that negative self-talk. Pay attention to that. Realize you're actually doing that. Let that shit go. Literally breathe into it and breathe it out. That's one way to change your state, and just to let that go. Because this goes also back to what we've talked about in the past: acceptance. Accepting the moment now, what's going on, letting go. That's the difference between having a reaction and a response. Going back to who you just brought up, Viktor Frankl, he's one of the first dudes to bring that into the forefront as far as, psychologists, where it's like, this is what people usually do. They have some type of emotional stimuli. There's something that happens with the body. There's this emotional behavioral reaction, right? And it's really quick. So for example, how people say, I'm quick to anger and, I'm going to do something dumb. And it's just like this like energy circuit that just, and then they react, do something, and then they regret it. Right. Okay. So the whole point of developing the awareness is this: the uncoupling of whatever is happening here from like the stimuli, whether it's internal or external, to then behavior. It's this gap that I've created through awareness. And it's that gap that allows me to make a choice with a response. Easier said than done. Takes practice, takes awareness. Possible? Yes, very. Are you going to hit it every single time? Fuck no.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, those are good. And I was just taking notes of like what's working for me, because I'm always trying to, everything that we talk about obviously applies to our lives, and there's ways that I'm trying to actively cultivate this for myself. And so I definitely never want to speak from a place like on top of the hill. Most of the topics I come up with are the things that I struggle with the most. So that's kind of evidence of my internal state a little bit. But some things that are working for me, like, for example, we'll just give an example so it's tangible for people. There's a project that I'm working on that I've never undertook before. and there's a lot of variables to it, and I'm not an expert. And so I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. And um, I have a lot of hope, and I put a lot of effort into something, and then there's continual setbacks. And it reminds me of Thomas Edison's famous quote where he's like, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Right. So in his mind, that speaks to, which I wrote down, is like changing your expectations, right? Change the way that you actually look at what's happening. So for Thomas Edison, he didn't see like failure, failure, failure. He just saw, okay, so this is just getting me closer to the truth. And he actually ended up being right. Like it took him 1,000 attempts to actually refine and figure out what the actual answer was. So every failure that happens is giving you feedback, right? Failure is feedback. That's a famous quote, and it's really true, because if you choose to sit there and sulk, well, then it's just wasted energy, right? You just failed and fucked up, and now that's a weight that you have to carry for the rest of your life. But if you actually look at the rubble and investigate the crime scene, you'll find evidence of what went wrong and how you can tweak it, right? Every good fighter, every good football player, soccer player, this is the process of greatness, is just like figuring out, okay, that sucked. What went wrong? Okay, there was an opening there that I could have closed. So that's the first thing, is like change it from failure to feedback, change the expectations. The other thing that I like to do is forcefully find the good in something, right? That's something that I've been practicing right now. So instead of focusing on dwelling on, oh, I just had this huge breakup and it's terrible, like we've all been through that. And I've spent years trying to get over a breakup. And then as soon as I do, there's like a silver lining and a beautiful relationship that I fall into. It's like, choose to see it where it's like, okay, well, that wasn't my person, right? Because the person that I'm going to be with is the person that I grow old with. It can't be the person that, it's heartbreak and we're torn apart and, tragedy. That can't be my, you know, love story, right? So you gotta change, you gotta see the good in it, and try to extract the goodness in everything. And then I think the biggest thing for me is change your inner dialogue. So instead of, like, a lot of times for me, like with this project, for example, a lot of the stress comes from, what's my partner going to think if I fail and I can't provide financially? What are my friends going to think if they're crushing it and I'm over here struggling and I'm not able to keep up? And if you really diagnose that and you really sit with that thought and try, just like we do in sales, where you try to ask a question behind the question behind the question and try to get to the root of what the hell is actually going on. There's like 6 human needs that Tony Robbins talks about, where it's like significance, growth, contribution, variety.
Yeah.
So there's all the
Acceptance, and I forget the other one. I always forget the other one.
Yeah, there's a, so the point is like there's these basic human drives where if you get to the root of any problem that we have, it kind of goes back to these basic human needs, right? And so I evaluated myself and I was like, okay, where is this coming from? And I realized that it was a need for approval and a fear that I wasn't going to be approved by other people. And immediately that's like, well, I'm fucked, because then my happiness is contingent on everybody else and what everybody else thinks to me. So it's changing the dialogue of, and I would encourage anyone that has this weight on their shoulders anytime they have a failure, see if this is the reason. Is it because you're seeking approval from others, or you're optimizing for pride in yourself? Like, I woke up today and yeah, I failed, but dude, I'm proud of myself, because yesterday that guy was a bitch compared to today. Like I showed up, I put the work in, I stayed overtime. Like, you start to develop this, you're optimizing for pride in yourself. Like, I'm proud of myself that I tried it, that I attempted it, when most people probably wouldn't. They would probably stick to what's familiar and what's safe, right? So it seems like you're in deep thought with that. Do you agree with that? What do you think about that?
I mean, a bit choppy in some parts, but the general gist is coming up. I would say this. I just want to back it up to something that you mentioned as far as love and relationships, and saying, that's not your person, And whenever I hear something like that, I always think, well, what if they were your person in that moment? Right? What if that was the case in that moment?
Season.
You said season. You froze up a little bit there for a minute, but you're back. All right, there you are. And
Oh,
and so I always think about that where I'm like, you know, and this is just me in my experiences and stuff like that, you know, where they say, the one. I don't necessarily believe in that concept in anymore. I believe you can have multiple relationships that fulfill not, and I'm not talking about like polyamory or anything like that. Um, but I think, you like you brought up, that word, you're gonna have different seasons in your life and relationships that are appropriate for that or not. And it's still going to be a moment, still going to be something for growth. Like we can see every opportunity in life or everything that we experience as an opportunity for growth. Or you could see it the other way. Which one's better? Which one's optimal? Which one's going to make you a greater person? And I think it's one of those things where we should be open to many and all experiences as much as we can, that as much as this life has to offer, and not be closed off to it. We're conditioned at a very early age, to be afraid of failure, to be afraid of experimenting, to be afraid of just basically to be afraid. And where does that come from? That comes from parents, that comes from our family, our culture, our society, education system, that comes from media, that comes from government, that comes from the whole big fucking psyop that it is. And what's the work? The work is to break free from all that. The work is to become the best possible version of ourselves on a daily, and that's going to look differently. And so, like you mentioned something about going through a heartbreak and things like that, you can still experience excruciating, painful things like that and still have a sense of peace about you. And what I mean by that is this: is like, accept what's going on, accept if it's like a grieving process, and allow yourself to just let that energy flow, as opposed to like, I'm going to suck it up. And it's like, well, guess what? That's going to stay trapped and it's going to come out one way or another. One way or another, it's going to come out. So I think a big part of what we're doing here with the process, literally, is creating something for ourselves, talking about these things, talking about, actionable things, exercises, concepts, principles that we can apply to our lives so we can have the most free flowing version of ourselves possible on a daily. But again, that's going to look different on a daily. I'm not going to have the same energy levels that I've had maybe yesterday than I have today than I will tomorrow. Right? Maybe something was a little off with my diet. Maybe my workout I probably shouldn't have had this morning, but maybe I should have. Whatever. I decided to wake up a little bit earlier this morning, try out a new schedule. I'm a little tired right now. Okay, that's okay. Am I gonna allow that to ruin the rest of my day? Think about how many times have we allowed something to ruin our day. It's like a little kid. I see that with my son and I go, "Oh shit, I remember doing stuff like that." And I have to be mindful of that, right? This is the worst day ever. Why? Why is it? Because I didn't get my ice cream. Oh, or I didn't get that sale. Or this guy made me late. Or someone said a rude comment to me on social media. Or this podcast is not getting enough likes. I keep going on. you know,
well, it doesn't even have to be that big, right? Like in psychology, again, I have like Finding Dory memory, so I can't remember half the things I bring up, but I heard somewhere that a lot of our responses and a lot of our responses that we have come from coping mechanisms that we've created through trauma, and it's our way of responding to the world. So you'll see people that are like myself, socially awkward, or um, someone that gets like I used to work with a guy that had anger issues like over nothing, just like the littlest thing, because he feels like his mindset is like my back's constantly up against the wall, even though reality that isn't the case, but he has that perception of reality. Or narcissists, right, when their parents are too overprotective or whatever. right? And we've all been narcissistic at some point in our lives, but um and so if you think about it from that angle, it's like, a lot of our life is this huge machine of just helping us cope with things that happen instead of creating a productive solution for them. For example, like the common pattern that we have, like we'll kind of wake up at the last second, which I'm privy to, right? Rush to work, and then when we're done, we go home and we watch 3 hours of Family Guy or whatever, or we're we're doing whatever,
Yeah.
or we have our smoke break because it's the one thing that keeps us together throughout the day, or we do this or that or the other, right? Like we all have these bad habits that we attach to ourselves, and they're a way to kind of cope with what's going on instead of the adverse of that, which is addressing it and confronting it. Like James said on one of our last podcasts, actually confronting the dragon and delving into that and facing it and seeing what that's all about. And I think that that's the attitude, the overall theme that has to change within myself and others that deal with this lag time in life where it's like, man, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I spent 4 years just
Mhm.
afraid.
Mhm.
We're like sitting in the sauce of
Mhm.
whatever. Is we have to change the way that we respond to things that happen and make use of them.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if we, and I listened to an audio of myself the other day because I was reflecting on this because I was sitting there, feeling bad about myself and had a setback and, was upset and things like that. And I listened to an audio when I first started UCM as a salesperson. And I was like, I said something really smart. I was like, if you if you live on the if your emotion, if you react based on the whims of your emotion, then your life is going to be dictated by the whims of the day. Like
Yeah.
whatever happens, this guy said this thing or whatever, now I'm just, my life is just a fucking leaf in the wind, just
Yeah.
going with whatever goes, and you can't make momentum with that. So
Yeah. Yeah. You become a toddler because that's what a toddler, that's and then people, are trapped with that. Right? You mentioned that dude who was always getting angry at the smallest of little things. It's like, geez, dude, it, they're all different versions of hell realms that we create for ourselves. And it's up to us to do that work to start letting go, to start letting go. I hung on to resentment for a long time with one of my personal relationships. And that was very hurtful. And every once in a while, it'll pop up. And now the work is to recognize it and to let it go and to let that shit go. And it is a constant thing. It's a constant exercise. The moment you feel it, because you'll feel it wherever it is, wherever you'll feel it. Recognize it, breathe into it, and let it go. Sounds simple, and it is, but it's difficult because some of us want to hang on to that shit because we have our identity wrapped up to it so tightly that who the fuck would we be without it? Think about that angry guy. Think about how miserable that kind of life must be to be angry over so many things. Again, referring to the serenity prayer that really just sums things down, right? Again, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Stoicism talks about that. Countless other traditions talk about that. If we're able to live our lives guided by certain principles and ideas, concepts, whatever, we'll have a much more pleasant existence in the short little time that we're here.
yeah,
So that's all I got, buddy. We hit time.
awesome. Yeah, and just to end it, it's obviously a practice. We're not perfect, so instead of striving for perfection and trying to just throw it out completely all at once, just try to like in war, in the try to get a foot of ground ahead of you, and just try to hold that line internally with yourself, and try to try to just get like a 1% gain instead of,
Yeah.
shooting for,
Yeah.
I just got to get rid of this thing forever because it's going to take work. It's going to take
Yeah.
a lot of subconscious fucking habit reframing for over a period.
Yeah.
How long does it take to change a habit? Like 60 something days, something like that.
Oh, dude, who fucking knows? I've heard so many things.
Yeah.
21 days, 60 days, 90 days, and it's just like whatever. It's just however fucking long it takes. Who cares? I think it's just you want to change something, then put the work in, make a plan. Do your best to commit to that thing every day. And if you lose ground, allow yourself some grace. You know, think about football. All right, football is always about moving the ball forward, gaining ground and losing ground, but you're always moving the ball forward. And look at it that way. Or you can look at, the example Wesley brought up, which made me think of trench warfare. World War I. We're like, we gained an inch today, man.
Right. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Hopefully I had some practical takeaways there. Um,
Let's see.
do you have anything to add to that, Marco?
No, I think we did a pretty good job. A little short and sweet one right
Am I
there.
am I
You
skipping? Am I
you're
choppy right
skipping,
now?
yeah,
Or?
a little bit, but that's okay. You come in and come out, but it's all
Oh,
right.
geez.
So, no,
All
you're
right.
good. You're good. You're good. We're gonna just wrap it up right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Process. And now that we're officially on YouTube, now you can really like, subscribe, share, comment, and all that good stuff. All right, folks, have yourselves a wonderful day. Take it easy.